are broken. We are broken in the US, worse in Canada, worse in the UK, worse in Australia. And if you saw Hong Kong go down in a matter of weeks with barely a whimper, that's what's going on right now. And while we stay busy, we stay distracted with all the chaos and all the news, it's not slowly anymore. They're rapidly taking our freedom.
Yeah, I think the pre-sale idea for the book is a great way to get it out there. I'm just curious a bit about your background. You've been in counterintelligence for so long. What do you remember when the moment was that you realized that China, the Chinese Communist Party, was the threat it is?
Actually, yeah. It was 2001, a couple of months after 9/11. There was this thing called the Hainan Island incident where the Chinese Air Force forced down a U.S. Navy surveillance plane that was 70 miles off the coast of Hainan Island. So they rammed it, forced it down on the ground, 24 people, 24 sailors, because it was a Navy plane, were forced on the ground. They were kept in solitary confinement. They were questioned. They weren't tortured, but they were questioned heavily for, I think, 10 days. Then they were released, and the Chinese Communist Party kept the aircraft for blueprinting all that information. So for me, that was a wake-up call. It's like I didn't know what was going on. I knew something was very serious for them to do that. And who are these guys? By the way, my dad fought World War II in China, protecting China and freedom, and used to fly out of a Chinese base to read weather patterns and so on, and how it would affect the Pacific's weather. So, we were partnered with the Chinese back then, but that's what this whole thing is. The world has evolved. It's become a very, very difficult powder keg today. That was my day zero, was when I understood what was going on with Hainan Island. The other one, my day one, was I was in an FBI intelligence briefing. And one of the lines of business in the FBI we came across, this was economic espionage. I'm like, wait a minute, these are my clients, and they went through 3 case studies in one city. I said, could this be really this bad? So I commissioned a study, and the study came back and said, oh my God, this is really, really bad. And this was circa 2011, so 15 years ago. So I said, do we need another cybersecurity software product? And that was the industry that I was in. And do I want to entertain a CEO's job with a cybersecurity software company? Do we really need another one of those? And the point is that software is all focused on protecting the perimeter, right? The perimeter of the castle and all that. And so I said, no, nobody's focused on the enemy. Who's doing it? And so that's when I commissioned the company. My company was Black Ops Partners back in 2011. So we focused on that, and we focused on protecting the assets, protecting intellectual property with Fortune 1000 companies. And through that, we saw just the devastation, rendering. Think about this. You spend $3 billion on a cancer drug. $3 billion and 7 years or 10 years on a cancer drug. And then your enemy steals your intellectual property, and they completely neutralize the time and the money that you just spent. And now they're selling your product back to your customers because they've infiltrated your company and your networks. They have your company, your product, your customers, and they're selling it back at like 25 to 45 cents on the dollar. How long are you going to stay in business? Now, this has been going on for decades. So think about it. When you take a company, and there are hundreds, you take a company and you destroy it, and then you take that revenue. So that revenue here was revenue, profit, jobs, schools, hospitals, national security. When you take that out of the economy and you put that over in the totalitarian communist economy, then what does that tell you? So now we're much weaker and they're much stronger because they've taken that. And there's just hundreds of those industries. Solar panels, U.S. technology stolen. You pretty much can't get solar panels unless it's from China. Electronic windmills, it's called American superconductor. Total U.S. technology. Now 80%'s over in China. This goes on and on from seeds for agriculture, hybrid seeds for agriculture, all that research and development. You've got all this stuff. And then, by the way, everything, when you're working with the Chinese Communist Party and that regime, everything is weaponized against the West to destroy the West, including viruses, by the way. So this is a big animal to get your hand around. It's very complex. And that's why, well, just give me the net. Give me 30-second review so I can just go about my day. No, this isn't one of those things. If you care about your life, you care about your family, you care about your freedom, you're going to get more detail. And
I'm glad you brought this up, because
Go
I
ahead.
first came across your work when you were working for Black Ops. And at the time, about 10 years ago, you said Chinese intellectual property theft costs the U.S. $5 trillion every year. I mean, usually the number that, like, I think the U.S. government gives out is about 600 billion. Just curious, like, why the difference, and is it still an issue 10 years from now?
Well, your questions, I love them, and you just energize me. So that number, 600 million, you just quoted, is from 2010, and it's from a government that never went to MBA school. And it's just the raw data or the raw technology or the raw IP that was stolen. That's intellectual property for the audience. And they don't put the time value of money on that. So if I spent, $1 billion on whatever, a new computer chip, well, that would be like 3 billion. If I spent that money on a computer chip, then and when it gets stolen, that computer chip was supposed to run my company for 10 years. So you have to multiply that time. We use a factor of 10. So back in the day, and by the way, I'm the guy that's been to the government and said, you guys can't talk. Okay, and this is the FBI back in the day. They said, well, we can only quote our case load. We can only quote what we're working, in other words, what we've prosecuted. And I'm thinking, okay, so we know that you prosecute 1 to 2%. And it's like, okay, and then their answer is, Casey, that's why we need guys like you. And actually, there was a billboard campaign on the West Coast, up and down 101, Silicon Valley and all that. And it said, yeah, we lost $11 billion last year. And this was back 2011, 2012. And they're billboards. And they think they're doing the FBI thought they were doing a good job. And I said, dude, if I'm a CEO of any company up and down 101, I said $11 billion divided by, you name it, 500 companies, it's a rounding error, okay? I'll just, cut costs some other place or sell more to get around it. That's a rounding error. That's not even on my top 10 list. So next question. So they had the number wrong. The number's been wrong all along. The size and the scale has been those numbers have been wrong all along. And that's the rest of us that are out here that do this. Like I said, this is just another Friday. So I'm communicating to you guys. And by the way, those are great questions, because if you're having these questions, that means your audience and John Q. Public is having these questions. So the number today is more like probably 10 trillion worldwide. Worldwide, it's about 10 trillion that we lose to economic theft. So that's the number today. And there's a reference. You can go to Cybersecurity Magazine, and a guy named Steve Morgan does good numbers and good quotes on that stuff. And I think his number's 10 trillion now globally due to economic theft.
Well, I actually have a sort of an economics question about this. So let's say the world loses $10 trillion a year to China, but China, it's not that China's actually making all of that back, right? There's got to be some heavy losses in that transfer, right?
Well, there are. Anytime they steal technology, it goes into a thing called military civilian fusion centers. And there's like a half a dozen of them. So they split the IP out and they say, okay, how do we use this militarily? And first and foremost, militarily to accomplish our objectives. And then secondly, how do we do it commercially to feed our economy and sell it back to the rest of the world? So yeah, there is probably an economic loss going through it, but still, I mean, We have an insatiable thirst. The West does, and specifically the United States. We can't get enough of cheap products or slightly discounted products coming from the manufacturer, by the way, that we created, the world's manufacturer. So, it's we think as individuals that we understand the world, but you don't understand the world from your enemy's perspective.
There's a lot more of this hour-long podcast to watch. Just click below to see it at ChinaUncensored.tv. When you join us there, you can be part of my exclusive China Uncensored 50 Cent Army, where we stand up to the CCP together. And also, check out Casey Fleming's book, The Red Tsunami, available for pre-order now. The link is below.